Hi, welcome to Talk About the Passion. I'm your host, Christian Campagna, and I'm not certain I need to label myself a host if it's just me. Does there need to be a host? I don't know what I'm doing here. Do you know what you're doing here? Currently, a good amount of us in the world are all sitting inside waiting for something to happen, good or bad. There's this constant gray cloud of uncertainty following us around 24 hours a day. It's the weekend now, and most people have been off work for the last week or working from home. The nature of my position at my work had me at the office all week, along with a girl from my department on the office side. And a few other people came in here and there throughout the week. The drive to and from work is usually just shy of an hour, though, through back roads. And last week it was around 35 minutes each way, so that was nice. Now that it's the weekend, in an attempt to lift the black cloud away a little bit, I'm avoiding the news. I've been doing this for many months already, and it's a nice breath of fresh air every weekend. I mean, with this situation, I'm keeping a little watch on things, but for the most part, avoiding it. I was regularly stopping at the market throughout the week, last week, buying things, and went this morning just early, just as the 7 a.m. shopping for the elderly and the sick ended. So if you're listening to this episode 49 years from now, in the mornings during this pandemic, in the mornings before all the crazy, white people flooded supermarkets to buy, toilet paper and buttermilk and Snickers or whatever, they would let elderly people or people with, respiratory issues and that kind of thing shop so they didn't get, run over by people like me. I showed up just at the cutoff at 7:59. And, I wonder if because of what I look like, I probably could have just passed as a senior citizen. A few years ago, like 5 years ago, I guess, I was 45 years old, and I was in a restaurant in California, and the girl taking my order, it was like one of those places where it's almost like a cafeteria, where you get, let me get the roast beef and the scoop of those green beans. I mean, not that disgusting, but... Anyway, when I got to the end, the girl said, with the senior citizen discount, you can get free pudding or ice cream. And I said, thanks, I'm 45. And also, what do you have, vanilla, chocolate, strawberry? I'll take vanilla. So I imagine if they questioned me, I probably could have easily just said, oh, I'm 58, to some 17-year-old, shopping cart collector, know the difference between someone who's 62 and 35. I don't remember that as a teenager. I remember thinking like all the rock bands I loved were like 58-year-old guys. And I remember finding out Robert Plant was only 20 years older than me. I'm definitely at that old age thing though, where I just feel the need to tell someone a story. Some guys send unsolicited dick pics. I tell unsolicited stories. This cashier, ringing up a can of breadcrumbs, I might let them know the reason I'm buying those breadcrumbs. Because one day I was in there and they were out of the particular brand, and I bought these, and my wife that I don't even have yelled at me, and now, we like this brand better anyway. Gee. Meanwhile, the kid is hoping I get hit by a car on the way out to my car. So here's an unsolicited story. I was thinking about this recently. Hanging out at this friend of mine's house after school when I was 13 years old. I lived in Swampscott. I've probably mentioned that 46 times on this. I grew up in this town, Swampscott, Massachusetts, which is a little, beach town a few minutes north of Boston. And aside from the current ginger governor we have in Massachusetts, Charlie Baker. Some other famous Swampscott residents were, Fran Sheen and Barry Goudreau from Boston. Piper Kerman, who I went to school with, she wrote the Orange is the New Black book. Johnny Pesky from the Red Sox. And then, of course, a gentleman by the name of David Lee Roth. Also lived in Swampscott. After school activities, though, for me and my friends, we're going to one of my friends, Dave's house. And we'd either watch MTV up in the attic, and this was 1982 to 83 when, MTV was still sort of a baby. I think it was 81 that they started, maybe. But you'd see, you know, a video by like the Police, the Fix, Thomas Dolby, Def Leppard, and maybe an AC/DC video like that live for those about to rock one. Remember that? That was a staple. If we weren't in the attic watching MTV, though, we would raid his parents' liquor cabinet and drink, you know, vodka, and then like change the line that his parents, or you know, put water in there, and then we'd lay on the floor and listen to records. And you know, one of the first ones we listened to was Pink Floyd, "Dark Side of the Moon," which is, you know, a cliche at this point. But I was thinking about it, and that album was like just 10 years old at that point, which is kind of crazy. And we were all probably hearing it for our, you know, first dozen times hanging out over there. It's like a strange thing to think about, right? Songs you've heard all your life. Like how many times you think you've heard, say, "You Shook Me All Night Long," especially if you were alive when it came out like me. 2,000 times? 10,000? The song is 3.5 minutes long. Multiply that by 10,000, and that's what, 35,000 minutes? 583 hours, 24 days. I did this math before I started recording this. So almost a month of "You Shook Me All Night Long." Imagine listening to that song continually on a loop for 24 days straight. You're just like tied up in a room and someone's just playing that constantly. Do you think you'd die? Maybe. How many times do you think you've heard, say, "Bungle in the Jungle" by Jethro Tull? Probably not as many times as me. I'd say I'm in the high thousands club with that song, you know. That guy Ed that you work with, though, maybe a dozen times. But he, you know, probably doesn't even know because he was too busy shooting pool. Feel free to send me a message or comment about, you know, how many times you think you may have heard "Bungle in the Jungle" by Jethro Tull. The best answer will win a chance to meet Jethro Tull this July. Just kidding. Just let me know, though. I really want to know. So, you know, hearing that for the first time at age 13 on the floor of my friend's, you know, big living room with these really high ceilings was quite an experience for a young pup like myself. I love that album and, you know, play some of it still on occasion, but my time with it is up at this point, I think. Do you ever do that? Have a band or record you love that just gets worn out? This happens to me for long periods of time, and sometimes I'll snap out of it, but there's a short list of songs I like, but I just never need to hear at this point. "Kashmir" by Zeppelin. You know, I love probably every Zeppelin song, except maybe a few. So I'm not a casual fan by any means, but this one is just more overplayed in my brain than, say, "Stairway to Heaven," which people seem to always accuse of being overplayed. I'm here to argue against that. It's fake news. The last argument I heard about this was with this, seriously, the 57-year-old man who said, "They play that at like every school dance." And I replied, "Bob," his name's not Bob, I changed it. His name's Steve, actually. Steve, I know you're not a school teacher, so how many school dances have you gone to? Because I think I only went to maybe 3 or 4 in my entire life. And I think it was played a total of 0 times. So I don't know where, you know, why he knows what songs they're playing at school dances. And what are the chances that has ever been played at a school dance in the last 43 years? Anyway, Steve, you're probably not listening to this, so you're not going to hear me shit all over you. How about "Iron Man" by Black Sabbath? That's another one. "Walk This Way" by Aerosmith, or the Aerosmith Run DMC version. Does anyone ever need to hear that again? Hanging at this particular friend's house is also where I discovered more Frank Zappa. My old brother had that Live in New York album when I was younger, and I knew the song "Titties and Beer," and that was about it. I got into Zappa quite a bit throughout my life, but I always have this love-hate relationship with a lot of his stuff. The vocals and a lot of the lyrics are generally a big turnoff. You know, some are great, but some of it just hurts my life when I hear it, you know? It's always like, hey! Anyway, the records, but the main one we got into was his first record, "Freak Out," particularly side 3, which includes "Trouble Every Day," which on this record is just a good, catchy 60s, psychedelic song. And that song remained in his repertoire for, I think, his whole career, as far as I know. Do you care about that? The second song on side 3, though, was "Help I'm a Rock Suite," which was basically this, I think, improvised thing in the studio with some nonsensical singing and chanting by multiple members of the Muslim Invention. And for me, it's like the ultimate song to listen to if you're on drugs. Even now, as an adult, it's still it's worth checking out because it's just weird. So it was a trio of 13 and 14-year-old kids listening to that while high on the marijuanas. It was definitely a mind-blowing experience that I still remember vividly every time we played it. It's a drag being a rock. The other Zappa record was a test pressing his dad had of Chic Your Booty. I have no idea why he had a test pressing or what. I think his dad was a lawyer or something like that. So I don't know why he had that. It was just one of those white sleeves with some handwriting on it. So he had a test pressing of that Chic Your Booty album, which includes the amazing instrumental Rat Tamago, which is essentially just a guitar solo section from a live version of The Torture Never Stops from 1978. How do I know that? I don't know. I know shit like that sometimes. I don't know anything. As far as this podcast goes, I have 2 episodes I recorded in the last month or so I'll be putting those out soon. And if this goes well, maybe I'll record more of these, especially if, we're all stuck inside. I'm open to any new ideas as well, so feel free to suggest some new content you'd like to hear on this podcast. It looks like I will probably be doing some over the phone episodes as well. Hey, you want to do one? Shoot the shit about anything without boring people too much, let me know. If this is the way we have to do it right now, we will, no problem. The last time I was stuck in my house was in January of 2015. There was a ton of snow that winter, well over 100 inches within an extremely short period of time. I was living in Marblehead, Massachusetts, which is next to Swampscott, Massachusetts. And I had written this sort of blog thing over 3 days while I was trapped there. And I went back to it and read it and to maybe see if I could figure out how to adapt this time. Anyway, so I'm gonna read from that. I wrote these over a couple days, trapped in the house during a snowstorm. Blizzard 2015, Part 1. Might as well be spring. January 26th, 2015, 9 p.m., Marblehead, Mass. Since I haven't been writing at all much lately, I figured I'd document this time stuck at home since it's currently illegal to go outside for the most part. I suppose I could take a walk and not get arrested or pulled over, but why would I do that when I have a warm house, a dog, a cat, and Ray Romano to keep me company? Went to the supermarket straight from work, and it wasn't as hectic as I thought it would be. I needed some essentials: mushrooms, a yellow highlighter, some rice cakes, 1 yellow onion, corn, eggs, and a loaf of bread. I imagine the girl that rang me up didn't notice everything I bought was either yellow or a light tan color as I did. My debit card went through, but then she informed me I still owed $3.48 somehow. After a brief panicked, which one of those things will I end up putting back, and fuck that woman behind me, put the stuff on the belt. In quite an aggressive manner, I bet she's going to be pretty angry if we start canceling items and calling managers over. Incident inside my head. And 2 other debit cards later, I was free to go with my yellow and tan groceries. I stopped at the empty coffee shop around the corner, and the nice young man who yesterday boasted like the U.S. Postal Service that they would be open regardless of the weather, informed me that they would definitely be closed tomorrow. I didn't really plan on leaving the house tomorrow, and that sealed the deal for me. I pull into the driveway, and the crazy neighbors who live above the garage at the end of the driveway have parked their gigantic white Cadillac in a place it's never been before, in a position where if I park where I normally park, it will be blocking them. I decide to just block them in and shrug it off. There is a note on the door. They say in times of stress you should bake. I think they say that. Someone does. Women? Grandmothers? Do grandmothers get stressed? They seem like they're always pretty happy about stuff. I mean, unless their husband of 62 years dies and they're destined for a lifetime of imminent lonely fish dinners. Well, I'm not stressed. I don't really mind snowstorms, unless, of course, the power goes out and I'm stuck eating yellow onion sandwiches and rice cakes for 3 days. I'm excited at the thought of not going to work tomorrow. I have this book I've been reading and a yellow highlighter to highlight the important stuff to deal with tomorrow. And did I say I don't have to go to work? So yeah, not stressed. I decided to bake when I got in. Something easy. Mushrooms stuffed with breadcrumbs and egg, and shredded cheese and cayenne pepper and mushroom stems. I put them in the oven around 5:30, and they were done before 6. I ate the meal and watched what seemed like about 6 hours of news about the storm. I have this thing when I watch weather on news where I just kind of zone out and not hear anything they're saying. Sort of like when I meet a new person and they tell me their name and I immediately forget it. Or if someone gives me directions and inside I'm saying, okay, I'll probably just look this up on my phone as this guy is really confusing me. But I'll keep nodding and make pretend I get it. 3 or so hours after I cooked the mushrooms, I went into the kitchen to get a drink, and notice a red light on the thankfully electric stove. Oh, left the oven on. Opened the oven and this wave of heat came out, burning the tips of my green dreadlocks just a tiny bit. I mean, heating at my face like when you step into the sun in the August after being inside too long, not burning my green dreadlocks. I turned the oven off and remember this is now the 3rd time I've done this. The first 2 times I did this, I was high as a kite on marijuana. Tonight I was completely sober, still alive and well over here. Maybe it will actually start snowing tomorrow. I hear plows, but outside looks the same as it did 4 hours ago. I'll be back. Blizzard 2015 Part 2. Everything Happens to Me. January 27th, 2015, 8:51 a.m. Marblehead, Mass. So it's 7:30 a.m., and I'm looking out the window, and all I see is white, which is pretty much what it's like when you look out the window here any time of the year in Marblehead. Whenever I have one of these types of days, I have all of these grand ideas to clean, organize, read, write, play music, cook, or do something productive. Let's see how that pans out. An hour later, our governor is on TV telling us things we already know, like how it's going to snow quite a bit today and to stay off the road so the plows can do their jobs. This new governor, Charlie Baker, a Republican, I don't know if it's what he looks like or how he carries himself, but he looks like your girlfriend's dad from when you were 15. Hey, Chris, what do you do? Well, sir, I'm 15, so I go to school, listen to Iron Maiden, and have acne. Very nice. Make sure she's home by 10:30. Yeah, keep calling me Chris, dude. I don't think I've ever called anyone sir in my life now that I think of it. The cars in the driveway, as a result of how they are tucked away between a wall, the house, and a garage, are pretty much completely visible thanks to the high winds and fluffy nature of this snow. 3 hours later, and am I really watching the Maury Povich show? I'm resigned to TV the remainder of this stay in the house, as I discovered a few minutes ago that I have left my glasses I use to read at work. Did I seriously do that, not knowing full well I would be here for at least a day and a half and have this book in the yellow highlighter? My work is currently moving. Yesterday we spent the whole day moving things out of there and cleaning, and I cleaned my whole desk off and collected some personal things that I took home but left the glasses. I generally never forget things, and kind of look down on absent-minded people who always forget things or misplace things. So what a piece of shit I am for forgetting those. They are cheaters, so I think I can handle reading without them, but Jesus. I have not opened the milk I bought 3 days ago yet, feeling like I will be stir-crazy by 1:30 p.m. Blizzard 2015 Part 2, A. Karma. January 27th, 2015, 12:54 p.m., Marblehead, Mass. Saying how I look down upon people who forget things in Part 2 has paid off well today. I was watching an hour-long program on the thing when the cat entered the room and proceeded to vomit on the floor and then go eat. Something I wish I was socially acceptable for people. I decided to deal with it whenever I get up. Fast forward to an hour later and I walk into the other room and step directly in cat vomit. I guess I'm now taking a shower. I've decided to do some shoveling, especially the stairs around my car. I'm not sure I'll be able to open the door to go outside and shovel. I didn't bring the shovel inside with me last night. Oh yeah, I lost my gloves. January, Blizzard of 2015, Part 3, one-room country shack. January 27th, 2015, 7:30 p.m., Marblehead, Mass. I'm convinced the neighbors downstairs have never seen daylight. You rarely see them, but good Lord, do you hear them. The main guy has this thick Massachusetts accent and just sounds like an asshole. I can't make out exactly what he's saying. He sounds like if some guy, named Frank from Everett, Massachusetts, did all the adult voices on Charlie Brown. I believe he's probably around 35 years old. There is his girlfriend who is friendly enough when you see her, even if you do I do a double take every time I see her, because for a second I think it's Ultimate Sin era Ozzy Osbourne in my driveway with the jet black hair, in sweatpants. Her son, who I imagine is about 20 years old and wears baseball hats with the label still on them, also lives here. On occasion, you'll hear someone freestyle rapping downstairs. Seriously. I've not determined if the freestyle rapper is the Frank from Everett, Massachusetts guy or the kid. I wonder if they know it snowed out today. Every once in a while, I smell marijuana coming up from downstairs in certain parts of the apartment and briefly get paranoid that I will fail an upcoming drug screening at work as a result of the smell, and then I wonder if I'm just being paranoid. Or am I being paranoid because I'm getting high from the marijuana I'm smelling? Reminds me of this time I was driving on Lynn Beach near Red Rock one summer. The Massachusetts State Police would sometimes have the horses out there for kids to pet. Me and my buddy were sitting in the long traffic line smoking grass and listening to Rush or whatever, and I told him to roll up his window. As I was so high, I thought the police horses were trained like police dogs, and they might catch a whiff of the marijuana smoke. I've just been informed that there will be no work tomorrow. I'm a little surprised and a little relieved. I did a little bit of shoveling today, well, about 15 minutes of shoveling my stairs before having to jump down onto the ground to start where I was waist deep in snow. 15 minutes was about as long as I could take shoveling without gloves on before I decided to walk down to 7-Eleven and just buy gloves. I'm pretty sure I bought women's gloves. At least there was a woman in the tag. Asked me if I give a shit that I bought gloves for women at 7-Eleven for $4.99. They did the job. For the remaining 15 minutes of shoveling I did, I looked at my car and there was a drift in front of it that looks like it will be a pain in the ass to deal with. Where the snow is light and fluffy, I had planned to either just drive right through it tomorrow morning, hope someone else miraculously deals with it for me, or I don't have to go to work tomorrow and the wind will blow it around. Then it will be easier to deal with Wednesday night or Thursday morning. I told a few jokes and did some impressions and songs for the dog tonight. He seemed unimpressed. I generally talk to myself quite a bit if I am in a situation where I haven't spoken to a human being in quite some time. Sometimes I like to imagine I'll get myself into some sort of situation where the FBI bugs my house or car and gets a kick out of the conversations I have with myself. I've begun a game of alcoholic bingo with my Facebook friends list that started yesterday. Every time someone mentions they are drinking a new type of alcohol I haven't seen yet, I mark it down on the sheet I have. I've yet to hear of anyone drinking white wine or tequila yet, but we're still only a day into the storm. I also have a which one of my friends will die of alcohol poisoning first thing running for the last few years, but I kind of keep that on the DL inside my head. Pretty sure there is some sort of creature or person running up and down the street screaming, so I fried up some chicken cutlets to take off my mind off the terror that placed in my imagination. Blizzard 2015, Part 4, January 28th, 2015, 6:08 p.m., Marblehead, Mass. What a sad, sad day in New England. The storm has left us with no goodbye or anything, left in the middle of the night while we were all sleeping. Speaking of sleeping, the neighbors downstairs, I think they slept all day. At one point, I ventured outside to do some shoveling. I noticed the creepy guy that lives above the garage was out there and thought I'd give him a hand. My car is blocking his, in the minivan, exactly, that the ship bags downstairs drive is next to my car. I shoveled a path out of my stairway around their car, but leaving a few feet of snow in front of theirs and then around mine. The creepy neighbor that lives above the garage shoveled a good chunk of the driveway. It was only about 8 inches deep where I was shoveling. It was a little deeper. About 40 minutes into this, the woman who looks like Ultimate Sin era Ozzy Osbourne poked her greasy-haired head out and said she messaged the landlord and the plow guy was on the way. Meanwhile, the garage neighbor guy had shoveled their stairs for them. Both of us kind of shrugged, put down our shovels, and went back inside. This was my second shoveling session. A plow showed up an hour or so later and pretty much just removed some of the snow. The way cars are positioned, it's hard to really plow us out. A few minutes later, I hear some commotion outside and see the son with the flat-brimmed baseball hat with the label still on it, rushing outside with a shovel. From what I could gather, his friends came to pick up in some sort of Lincoln and got stuck at the end of the driveway, blocking traffic coming up our hill. I sat in the window and watched this ordeal as cars started lining up behind them. 3 vaped out 20-somethings trying to figure out how to get a car with a rear-wheel drive out of the snow was amusing. I even snapped a few pictures of it. I took a shower, and they were still out there when I came back. I probably could have helped them, as I probably weigh about as much as 3 of the crackhead-looking kids combined, but also the fucking boyfriend of Gorilla Cookie Face, Ultimate Sin era Ozzy Osbourne could have went out and helped, or hey, maybe come out and help shovel. I had a great shower and fried up some cheese sandwiches on wheat bread and fell asleep watching a James Bond movie. Tough living, these blizzards. At some point, I hear some commotion outside and realize the loud boyfriend is outside talking to the girlfriend of the man who lives above the garage. Her father is our landlord. She is kind of a character and kind of looks like a cross between Randy Rhoads and Dave Murray from Iron Maiden, but like 80 pounds. She's got a raspy voice and is one of about 4 people in the world who I give a pass to calling me Chris. I never look out the window to see what's going on. The boyfriend then comes back in the house, and I hear him yelling about something regarding the driveway. He's going on and on like he usually does. One of these guys that just yells and yells constantly. I mean, I imagine if I was living with that woman, I would probably yell quite a bit. For instance, if I woke up in the middle of the night and saw her sleeping in the bed next to me, that would be cause for alarm, and I would probably cry out something. I hate people who yell, people with short fuses. I have a short fuse from time to time, and I hate when it comes out. I usually recognize it and try to think about how absurd the thing is I'm getting upset about. This fucking thing won't do the thing it's supposed to do. Sort of like that bit Louis C.K. had. We're pointing out the absurdity of people getting mad at their, smartphones. This guy downstairs, though, I can just imagine him constantly getting heated about ridiculous things and then just not doing anything about it. I don't know what this guy does for a living. I have no idea what his sleep schedule is. My basic idea of what happens in that apartment under me is they smoke weed, yell, watch loud TV, freestyle rap, yell, make gorilla cookies with that woman's face, smoke weed, and then eat all the gorilla cookies. So this guy had all fucking day to come out and shovel, and just grab a shovel. I even positioned the 3rd shovel in view of their window in a snowbank. You can either be a guy that sits inside and yells at a woman all day, or be a man and do some fucking work outside. I'm not the person to confront someone or tell them what to do, especially in this situation. I've literally never even looked this guy in the eye. I think I've seen him once. I'd rather just be the guy that sees something that needs to be done and just do it, especially when you really have no choice. I went out a few minutes after his yelling fit and did some more shoveling, careful to still leave that little patch of snow in front of their horrible minivan. It felt good getting out there a 3rd time with the headphones, listening to Black Flag and Cro-Mags and other hardcore music and making progress. Anyway, tonight I've decided to introduce them to Slayer, Rain and Blood at a good volume. I'll let some shithead be a shithead and be the type of person that constantly needs to yell and be abrasive while I do my own thing up here. Before this blizzard started, I dreaded it, probably like the neighbor downstairs did. I realized today it's not really a big deal, snow. You go out, shovel, and that's the worst thing about it. I mean, unless, of course, you lose your power or something horrible happens to your home. For the majority of us, though, it's nothing. It's tiring, but I know any time I shovel snow, I always feel better at the end, like I accomplished something. You can go stir crazy sitting in the house for multiple days, as I have a little. I don't go out as much anymore, so being at home isn't that big of a deal. But when you feel trapped in like this, it does something to your head, which is why I needed to fix it. The guy downstairs, I imagine, he just let things heat up inside his head until they blow for no good reason. I never want to be one of those guys. I never will be. Here's hoping their car doesn't start tomorrow morning. The end. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Talk About the Passion. I'll probably record another solo one like this at some point, but stay tuned for, I have 2 new episodes that I'm going to put out in the coming weeks. And maybe, I'll try to do these solo ones during the week. if I can come up with something to talk about. And again, if you want to come on here or you want to call in and talk about something, anything, do an interview or shoot the shit, whatever, let's do it. We're all stuck inside. And so while editing this and putting it together, I realized I never finished talking about my friend's living room and the joy of that experience. So I apologize if this episode is all over the place. It's a crisis. I think it was there was an article going around recently about listening to records as an experience. I think it was in the LA Times. And it's not too old man of me to say there's nothing like hearing something on vinyl and holding the record in your hand, as it's true. I mean, unless you're talking about a record that was reissued and the repress just looks terrible and doesn't feel like the original. Tang. Yep. So we had the experience at Dave's house, with the Freak Out record and Dark Side of the Moon, which, both have some pretty crazy artwork. They're both gatefold records. And I think that Freak Out might be the first double record ever. I might be wrong. And then the other Zappa record was just that plain white sleeve. At that age, for me, artwork and photographs, when connected to music, really told a bigger story. And, imagine listening to Led Zeppelin 4 and not having that weird-ass album cover to stare at. And, do that thing where you hold the gatefold up to a mirror and the mountain the old man is standing on turns into a lion. You know what I'm talking about? I know the real heads out there know. What's up? Getting into hardcore music around the same time as this, those records would often have pictures of the bands performing live, which just made them seem much cooler. You never saw much of that on like big rock band albums unless it was a live record, like that Foghat one where each of their faces are in like the letters of live. How sick is that? Our friend Matt Spencer, his mother was never around, and we would spend all hours of the day hanging at his house blasting Ozzy's Diary of a Madman and Iron Maiden Peace of Mind, and then the Ozzy Speak of the Devil live album where he does all the Sabbath songs. But his mother, it's weird, his mother was never there. I think she worked for Gillette, and we were like 12 and 13, and I remember every once in a while, I think I met his mother maybe twice the whole time I was friends with him. I'm still friends with him. This is like 1982. And, but he would like leave like a joint out for his mother. And we were like 13. So that's kind of weird that's a thing that happened. And then my friend, Peter Biebergall, who was the first guest on this podcast, and he has a few amazing books you should buy. One's called Season of the Witch, How the Occult Saved Rock and Roll, which is amazing. And you should definitely seek that out and just seek him out in general. He's a good person, and his writing is top-notch. We also spent, time on the floor of his basement, Peter's basement, surrounded by records. And, I remember at that point, too, we didn't, put them in plastic sleeves. And I still have a couple of those records still, like the SSD Get It Away record that I have is that same exact one that I used to bring over to his house. Same with my the Misfits Earth AD. Well, I have the one that's the Wolf's Blood. It's like a German import, so Wolf's Blood is on the cover. And Earth AD is on the other side, and it's like a little different colored. Look it up. So we would listen to that a lot. Youth Brigade Sound and Fury was a big one. That first Social Distortion album, Mommy's Little Monster. Rudimentary Penile, Death Church. All those Crass records, Feeding of the 5,000, Christ the album. And that stuff was just weird. Like, you'd be like really high and playing those Crass records because, I don't know, like at 12 or 13 years old, hearing that music, it's some weird ass shit. Flex Your Head, the Discord compilation. So discovering music that way was and still is the way to do it. It's easy to download a few songs or stream a new record by an artist, but having the whole thing, just takes it a step further. So what I'm saying is just go out and buy some records. Personally, I've actually put a little freeze on buying records because I'm running out of space and I don't plan on buying any more shelves. Also, who's thinking about fucking record collections right this minute? Me? You? So while you're stuck at home for the foreseeable future, why not do this more? Just sit there, throw your phone in another room so it doesn't, vibrate, and you pick it up and look at it every 40 seconds and play a record. You don't have to get high or anything like that. It's all the same. And, one thing I love to see is when I see, and a lot of my friends post this on social media, and I think it's just the nature of me having a lot of friends in music, musicians, record store people, the label people, and just big fans of music, DJs, etc. But a lot of times you see them post, they just got their kid into David Bowie or something like that. So that's always cool to see. Anyway, thanks again for listening to this. If you think there's any reason for me to ever do this again by myself, leave me a comment and I'll think about it. Until next time, stay safe. Later.
The kind